Maria Eckersley is the queen of what she calls easy, lazy fun, and she has forever changed the way my family serves pancakes.
We have a tradition that I will never let the kids take a pancake off the griddle. They have to catch it. So I will take my spatula and I will toss it behind the back, and the pancakes fly across the kitchen and they have to catch it. And it's just become a thing in our family, And so they will, we'll laugh every single time we have pancakes.
This is the How She Moms podcast with Whitney Archibald. I'm a mother of 5 on a mission to help moms connect with your kids, manage your homes, and create your own unique version of motherhood. I curate ideas from different moms so you can pick and choose what works for you and your family. Before we get started, I'd like to thank BetterHelp for sponsoring this episode. BetterHelp is therapy that feels like it was designed for busy moms. There are a lot of things that stand in the way of moms taking care of ourselves and getting the therapy we often need. Scheduling an appointment, arranging a babysitter, even finding the time to drive to an office building. With BetterHelp, all those obstacles disappear. It's professional therapy done securely online. BetterHelp will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist. You can start communicating within 48 hours. It's not a crisis line, it's not self-help, it's professional therapy. The service is available for clients worldwide, no matter where you live, so even if you don't have a lot of local resources, you get access to over 20,000 experts. BetterHelp is committed to finding the right therapeutic match for you, and it's easy and free to change therapists if not. You can also log into your account anytime and send a message to your therapist. You'll get a timely and thoughtful response, plus you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions so you don't have to find that babysitter. You can even schedule it during nap time. Plus, BetterHelp is more affordable than traditional offline therapy, and financial aid is available. BetterHelp wants you to start living a happier life today. Visit BetterHelp.com, that's BetterHelp, and join the over 1 million people taking charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. There's a special offer for How She Mom listeners. You can get 10% off your first month at BetterHelp.com/HowSheMoms. I'm sorry, but I've been holding out on you. About a year ago, I interviewed Maria Eckersley for my episode called How She Plays with Her Kids and How She Doesn't. When I started figuring out what interview to share this week, I couldn't believe I've kept this interview moldering in my archives for so long. It's one of my very favorites. She's one of those women who just exudes joy. From the minute I met her on Instagram, I knew I wanted to learn more about her and how she moms. And now we all get to. This interview is just chock full of fun, meaningful ways to connect with our kids, ideas about how to create a positive family culture, how to pursue your own passions while cultivating your kids' passions, and how to overcome trials, of which the Eckersley family has had plenty. When I re-listened to the interview, I felt like I had completed a beautiful journey. Maria is the mother of 6 kids, and she also runs the blog mecmom.com, where she shares posts and products to help you be the fun mom, including lots of great printables from chore charts to games to party planning packs. I subscribed to one of her courses for teaching children from scripture, so I get to learn from her every week. Let's jump right into my interview with her so you can start learning from her too. When I say play with your kids, what do you think of?
Well, I think it varies. I have 6 kids, 21 down to 7. So we have a lot of variety. It's all about flexibility in my mind. I feel like you have to kind of give them options, but not be, I think because we had so many kids so quickly, I really didn't have the option to be the hands-on, like sit with my child for hours at a time kind of mom. I would give them, what I would try to do is condense my time into like quality good time that was a small chunk, rather than kind of give them little bits of me throughout the day. So we did things like in the summertime, we do something we call Couch Potato Book Club, where we will read a chapter of a book at night, and we always read in some weird location, and it's just something we do as like a secret club between us. And that means the rest of the day, I haven't read with any of them, and I haven't been able to like sit in a quiet, cozy spot with them. But at the end of the day, in the night, we'll get pajamas on and like sit in the laundry room, or sometimes we go out on the hammocks and deck, and we'll find a different spot each night. In fact, that's part of the book club, is you have to pick a different spot every night to read. And I found that those little packets of solid mothering time would kind of replenish me enough to make me not feel guilty about the other things I didn't accomplish in the day. It seems to be like now I have the benefit of seeing my older kids mature, and those are the pieces of the day they remember. They have no memories of me doing dishes or ignoring their playtime when I'm, vacuuming or whatever, but they have memories of, cuddling up with me in the laundry room to read a book. So I feel like you just kind of have to put your energy into what will last. You want to do things that will make memories that will last. And all the little stuff, you just have to kind of let slide.
I love that. I noticed that you said you used the word replenish yourself. And I don't know that a lot of moms think of their playtime with their kids as replenishing them. Maybe they think of that as their time to give. How do you make it work for both?
It's a mental thing I have to push myself to do every single time, because I feel like my natural state and desire is, I mean, every time it would be time for Couch Potato Book Club, my brain would be like, I don't have time today. I'm too tired today. I feel the same way with scripture study. It's your natural inclination to want to preserve your energy and your time. And I feel like what I've found is if I will just push myself over that hump and say, okay, I'm just going to give it 5 minutes. I'm just going to give it 10 minutes. What I've learned is that it's like planting this seed, and it will like swell up. And I have to reteach myself that every single time. And that's where the replenishment comes in, is every time when we end Couch Potato Book Club, I have never closed the book and said, well, that was a waste of 10 minutes. Like, not one time, because every time I feel like, okay, that was worth it. Look how happy they are. Look how I feel so much better about my ability to mother when we accomplish that. So I just have to always kind of keep the same way. I never sign up for a race thinking about what the training is going to be like. I think about what the finish line is going to feel like. I feel like with mothering, you have to think of that way as well. You have to think about the finish line. When I close this book, when we, come home from Lagoon, when whatever it is where I'm pushing myself to be doing, I think about the finish line, and then I feel like I have motivation to kind of get over the hump, because I think that's really normal. I feel like that inclination to kind of preserve and protect our time is totally normal, but you have to pick key moments where you let it go so that you can get something even better in return.
Oh, it's so refreshing and nice to hear you say this, because in my mind, I look at all the things, all the fun ideas you have, and I think, oh my gosh, that is the pinnacle of the fun mom. And it's so refreshing for me to hear you say that it is in little spurts, and that you have the same inclinations that the rest of us have to be, I don't know, lazy isn't the right word, but
Yeah, no, it is. to be like guarded, I think, is the word. Like,
yeah.
you're to guard your time because you know how limited it is. But I feel like it's, if you talk to any farmer, I feel like enough, if they've been a farmer enough seasons, they know that the time is worth it because they've seen the product, right? And I feel like I've been in this mothering game so long, I've seen the product enough to know, okay, it's worth it. I just got to put in a little bit of time. But I couldn't see that clearly when I had young kids. And I feel like it's one of the blessings of having kids over a long span of time, is you get to kind of enjoy both those things. Now I still have little kids and I can see the results in my teenagers. So it kind of motivates me to keep going.
Yeah, that's awesome. So your tagline is includes to help you be the fun mom. So I'd like to know, like, your underlying philosophy, like, why is fun even important in a family?
Oh, that's a good question. I just feel like I think a family is a safe place to retreat to, right? And I think, there are a lot of roles in a family that you have to, it's a place of learning, it's a place of, helping each other and all sorts of good things. But I feel like the fun element can kind of seep into all those other ones. And it just, I don't know, for our family, I feel like it created a kind of identity, almost like, our family is known for a certain thing, just like some families are known for being amazing golfers or, you know, loving boating or whatever. Our family is kind of centered around fun, but like easy, lazy fun. So I think it's helped kind of connect us. We've had lots and lots of hard things, just like every other family. And I feel like having that thread of fun that weaves through all of our trials has helped us kind of, I don't know, stay afloat during the hard parts and give us kind of purpose behind things. So I really feel like the value of play and the value of fun is, you really can't measure it. It reaps rewards for a long, long time. So it's important to me.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. I think it's one of those intangible things that you can sometimes go several days and be like, oh wait, we've kind of neglected that fun
Yeah.
aspect, you know, like you have to consciously incorporate it into your culture or it's not going to just happen naturally. So
Yeah.
you have to
And
be
it takes some
intentional.
practice. I feel like it's, when you're first getting started trying to do that, your kids might be resistant or they might be annoyed even. And I feel like the more they're used to that being a part of your family's dynamic, the easier it is. If you've never played a board game or got out cards, to play with your kids, they're going to be resistant and annoyed. But if you do it every Sunday and you create some routine, it becomes part of the flow and it feels more natural. So if it feels awkward at first, don't stress. It gets better.
Yeah.
Because most of the time when I'm a fun mom, it's not because I planned it that way. Like it's in little things. For example, every time we have pancakes, we have a tradition that I will never let the kids take a pancake off the griddle. They have to catch it. So I will take my spatula and I will toss it behind the back, and the pancakes fly across the kitchen and they have to catch it. And it's just become a thing in our family. So they will, we'll laugh every single time we have pancakes, and normally that would be one of those things where it's like, oh, it's a pancake dinner. I'm such a lame mom tonight. But
Right.
my kids love that piece of it. And because we've added this element of fun in, then I don't feel guilty about making pancakes for dinner. We can do it anytime we want. And I feel like a good mom because we're laughing in the kitchen so I feel like creating fun moments is a way to kind of neutralize whatever guilty feelings you have about being imperfect. I think it just gives you like the freedom to enjoy your imperfection a little bit differently.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Because yeah, instead of having it be the centerpiece of your guilt, have it be one more thing adding to your guilt. It's the thing that relieves the guilt, and it's the thing that
Yeah.
that lightens. I mean, it's both for you and for the kids, and I think that's where people miss the boat a little bit. Is that it's real fun is when you're both having fun.
Yeah, right. Well, and I feel like it's a proactive choice, right? And I think it even helps to say, what are the parts of our family dynamic that I don't enjoy? And what if I laundry is what I hate, then I'm going to try and focus my efforts to figure out a way to make that fun to me or fun to my family. There's got to be some cool hamper we can buy that they can shoot like a basket, or I need something that makes this compelling for my kids so that we can both enjoy it better. So I feel like that's where you want to put your effort, you want to put your energy and even money, um, to help neutralize the things you don't like.
That's great, and that brings up another point because I've heard both sides. Like I've heard moms that make work and make chores really fun, and I've heard some that are like, well, that's not the real world. I don't want to feel like I'm entertaining them all the time. How do you find that balance between like being your child's cruise director and making life fun?
We definitely are not like about chores necessarily being fun. My kids would never tell you that jobs are fun, but we do incorporate things. So, for example, on our job chart that runs our entire house, they'll have, their kitchen job, their daily job, their Saturday job. None of those are fun, but they also have what we call their fun job for the week, which is one kid is the DJ for the week, which means anytime there's a fight in the car about who picks the music, the DJ is the one that gets to, be the deciding vote. Or if we need music in the morning for while we're, getting ready for school, they get to pick the music. And there's another job that's the movie man, and that means if we watch a family movie, they get to pick it. Or if there's a fight on the TV about what people want to watch, the movie man is the deciding vote. So I feel like they don't love the job chart and they never will love cleaning the bathrooms, but I try to make it, if the hardest job, like they all hate loading the dishes, at the least popular job, so I try and attach that with the same fun job that they all love. So things like being the movie man is a favorite spot for the week, so we put those two jobs together. So I feel like in
Oh,
our world it's just a balancing act, right? You want to try and find ways to help your kids. I feel like that's how as an adult we have to function all the time. Our job, a lot of what we do, even if it's something we're passionate about and love, a lot of it we don't enjoy. So we find ways to kind of cushion that blow a little bit by doing things we like, sandwiching it in between things we do enjoy. So I feel like teaching that when they're kids is a good thing too.
yeah, that's genius. So, do you have a picture of that on your blog of that chore
Yeah.
chart with the fun things? Okay,
Yeah, in fact, there's an editable download. If people want to go
awesome.
grab it, you can edit the chores, but it will show you, and it has the video attached to it to kind of help walk you through how we run that system. But that basic system has functioned in our house for at least 10 years, and it's been great. So I've loved it.
I really I've had a lot of different chore charts, and I have never thought about having a fun one on there. That just never
Yeah, it
even
makes a
occurred to
world of
me.
difference.
I love it. That is so genius. Okay. Man, I feel like I have so many more questions because you keep bringing up these great, brilliant ideas. So, can you tell me some of your like simple day-to-day family traditions, like the pancake one, that just bring a little fun?
I think I wish I could call them traditions. They're just more things that get injected into the day. It's like
Yeah.
I learned from my husband's mom. They did something called midnight runs, which means when you have teenagers, it gets harder and harder to have play. It has to look very different, and midnight runs is one of those things that can be an option that way. So, for example, I can come grab them at 11:30 at night and say, okay, we're going to run to the gas station and we're going to get a treat. And it's just one of those things that's like a quick, hey, I want to connect with you, and I also really like Diet Coke, so let's make those two things happen at the same time. So I feel like little things like that make a big difference. I think having traditions around like your tuck-in schedules and how your kids wake up in the morning and how they go to sleep at night is a great way to you know have some consistency that helps you be fun on a regular basis. I think incorporating those things in is always a good idea, but things like that.
Since bedtime is often one of those difficult spots that Maria talked about, at least in my house, I next asked her what bedtime looks like for her family.
I feel like once you have teenagers in the house, bedtime gets really hard. And so for
Uh-huh.
us, it's, I tried it. That's my time to connect with her. So I tuck her in almost every day. Sometimes it's somebody else, but we have this tradition where we call dibs. So somebody in the house will call dibs on putting Violet to bed. And so she will often come like sneak up to me at dinner time and she'll be like, Mom, I want you to call dibs. So if I call dibs, then that means I get to tuck in Violet for the night. And so then she looks forward to that for the next, hour or two while the night is settling down. And for her tuck-in schedule, it's really simple. We tend to read under her bed. I like creating cozy spaces for my kids. So she has a loft bed that we cut down a little shorter so that it's kind of more cozy feeling underneath. And then we installed some lights under it. And so we try to retreat to that kind of cozy space and read. And then, I just tuck her in and we put on lullabies on the Alexa and she goes to sleep. So we don't have a big schedule, but I do try to, as I'm putting each kid in bed, I don't follow each kid to bed because obviously I have some older kids as well, but I try to talk to each one of them before they get there. We often do scripture study late at night, so that kind of gives us an easy gateway into talking to each one, asking about their day, and then saying prayer and connecting and then going to bed. So those kind of gateways give me an easy way to connect with each one of them.
Yeah, that's great. So when they were all little, when you had so many little ones all together, what did bedtime look like then?
Bedtime was exhausting. I
Yeah.
still remember when my kids were little being like, it took so long. I remember being so excited when Violet finally, she's our youngest, when she finally learned to shower. Because I'm like, oh, I felt such freedom to not have to have tub time anymore. That sounds
Yes.
terrible. But that was not like my happy place. But I did find that if you could do certain things to make it better, like I remember anytime the kids were in the bath, I would sit on the edge of the tub and soak my feet. And that was just one of those things that was like you could relax for even just a second. You got like a little a little rejoicing moment there. And those kind of things seemed to help. But when they were little, it was much more scheduled. It was like I needed them in bed by 9 o'clock because I was exhausted and I
Yeah.
needed some time for me, especially when Jason was traveling. It was much more regimented. But now that the kids are older, I feel like you have to just roll with it. It's otherwise you lose them, right? You lose those like little magic moments that are kind of scattered throughout the day. So now it's different. But back then it was much more scheduled.
Yeah, yeah. So what do you do? So I have a 15-year-old is my oldest down to five.
Okay.
So I have five and 15 down to five. So we're just emerging into those teenage years. Um, how do you how do you balance that when your teenagers want to stay up so late and you want to connect with them in those late hours, like your midnight runs or whatever? Like,
Right.
they come alive at night.
Right.
And then those little ones still kind of wake up early. So how do you balance that when half of your kids want to stay up late and half of them want to wake up early? And when do
Well,
you sleep?
that's a good question. I am not a big, I honestly don't use the word balance very often when it comes to motherhood for this very reason. I feel like I never achieve a balance. When you think of balance, you think of like scales that are even and that you're giving enough love to each kid and they're all in a content, happy place. And I feel like for me, that visual doesn't work with my
Yeah.
mothering. So one of the things that works for me is instead I try to get a harmony in my mothering. So there are going to be times when my 17-year-old needs a lot more attention. And that means Violet doesn't get a cozy tuck in. She doesn't get reading books. She says, I say goodnight and give her a kiss and I get her in her bed so I can go talk to the 17-year-old. And that's a harmony, right? It means I'm putting the same amount of effort and time in, but it's divvied up very unevenly. And the reason that works is because there's going to be times when Violet needs extra time and Emily will be happy to, just head to bed without me even saying goodnight for that night. So I feel like instead of worrying constantly about balance, you just have to trust that your mothering instincts and the promptings and ideas you get will help you find harmony. And as one note goes up, another one might go down. And that's just kind of for me, the best way I've found to mother without the guilt. Because I feel like there are times when I don't get a chance to read with Violet and I just say, I'm too tired, sweetie. You got to just get in bed and I'll see you in the morning. And so I feel like you have to give yourself permission for that to be okay. And the way I can do that is by noticing where I amplified my motherhood somewhere else. Because it's really easy to have a terrible tuck in with Violet and then think, gosh, a better mom would have read with her. I would have like sang her a song. But instead I try to look through my day and think, okay, where did I amplify my mothering? I must be tired for some reason. And I can look through the day and say like, oh yeah, I actually helped Will with this science fair project and I made dinner tonight instead of getting pizza. That's why I needed to, reduce Violet's tuck-in energy because I used it somewhere else. So I feel like that kind of gives me peace of mind about my parenting. Does that make sense?
Yes, I love it. And do you remember when you kind of came to that realization? Was it a moment, or was it a
I
a
don't know
time
if it
in
was a
your a
moment or
time in your
not.
motherhood that you kind of figured that out?
I think it certainly, I had to articulate it maybe to myself when Jason first was diagnosed. So Jason was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in 2016. And so our oldest, let's see, Hannah would have been 16 and Violet was 2. So it was just, I guess she was 3. It was a very hard time for me as a mom because I remember constantly being worried that I was not enough. In fact, knowing that I was just not enough. Um, and so really had to kind of come to terms with that and try to, I don't know, try to figure out a way to help myself not feel so guilty because adding guilt on top of being a caretaker, on top of being everything else it was hard. Anyway,
Yeah.
so it was one of those spiritual understandings that it helped me to articulate it and figure out, okay, why is this? How can I mitigate this problem in myself? And it was one of those things. I wish I could tell you there was like a certain day where I understood it, but I think it was one of those understandings that kind of layered on top of itself, over
Yeah.
time. And I do remember being at the park one day when Violet was little, about that same age, and there was a mom at the park, and we happened to be sitting next to each other, and she said, "How many kids do you have?" And I said, "Oh, I have 6." And she said, "I only have 1. I can't even imagine." And she said, "I'm terrified to have another kid because I feel like I could never divide my love between all like 2 of them. Like, how would I ever give enough love to this kid and another one?" And I wasn't articulate in that moment, I'm sure, but I remember thinking, what a sad perspective that is, like to the idea that your love can't expand. I guess I just see my mothering as like almost like a gas in a room, like it will expand into the space where it is, and I just have to trust that if I just put it out there, then it will expand and it will fill the space that it needs to fill. And it might look different than I intended when I put it out there, but it will go where it needs to go if I'm just putting the effort in.
Yeah, that's such a sad idea that it's something that can be divided, and that it's not just this proliferate emotion, you
Yeah.
know?
Well,
Yeah.
and the assumption that you're supposed to do it all. That was the other thing I thought was kind of sad about that perspective is, I think as you have more kids, you realize you can't do it all, but you also see how many wonderful ways other people cushion that blow. I will never be the one that teaches my 17-year-old everything she needs to know about being a great woman, right? She's going to figure that out by watching me and also watching all the other women that she sees in her life. And to assume that, I should have fewer people in the family so that I can give her more of my time, I actually think is depriving her a little bit of, all those outside influences that can help her. So I feel like it's a balance, but I think it's good to remember that it's not all on your shoulders and that your kids have loads and loads of good, competent adults who will help you raise them. And you just kind of have to trust in that.
Yeah, and that circles back to fun too, because when I had two kids, I was on the floor. My knees, the knees of my pants were all worn out because I was crawling on the floor, chasing them around. I was in the mix. But then the older kids took that role with my younger kids.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful thing that was extra special for those younger kids, even though they didn't get as much as me, they got way better playmates actually.
I feel the same. I mean, I am number 8 of 10 kids. And so my mom was busy all the time. She was phenomenal and wonderful in every way, but like I didn't have a lot of one-on-one mom time, but I had loads of experience with my 8 older siblings or 7 older siblings. So I feel like, yeah, you figure it out one way or the other.
Yeah, totally. Okay. So, one thing I'm focusing on this season is the different stages of motherhood, because, we talk so much about the stages that our children go through, especially in the early years, but
Mhm.
we also go through stages as mothers. And I'm wondering um, how you would characterize different stages that you've gone through.
Hmm. I don't know that I have titles for them. That would be that would be a good thing to write someday. But
Yeah. Yeah.
I think there were definite stages of my motherhood where the vast majority of my time was given out. Like I really had very little to kind of to replenish myself with for a time. But I think I don't know. I feel like that over time has shifted. And as I've progressed in my motherhood, it's not that I give less of myself, it's just a different kind of giving. Where when they were young, my time was very, it was involved in play, it was involved in teaching, it was involved in kind of those day to day maintenance sort of things. And as they've grown, it shifts into giving them more of my emotional energy. I think and I've enjoyed both, to be honest. I know there are people who don't love the teenage stage and there are people who don't love the toddler stage, but I've really enjoyed all of those in different ways. There's also things I hate about both, but I feel like that's kind of the joy of motherhood is you actually get to see your heart develop and have empathy that you didn't know you had. And anyway, so I think that shift has been the big stage of motherhood for me, to shift from where it was super focused on giving time and now it's more focused on giving um I don't know, emotional energy in a whole bunch of different ways. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, no, it absolutely does. Yeah. It's so physical when you're young, and
Hmm.
or when your kids are young, and it's so emotional, and even the actual work involved in motherhood looks completely different.
Yeah. And it's easy to think back on those hard physical days and think, oh, that was so hard. And it was, but you also have the compensating blessing of all your kids can't wait to hug you when you walk in the door, and they can't wait to like have you tuck them in at night, and they tell you they love you and make little cards for you every day. Like so I feel like what's wonderful about motherhood is there are compensating blessings either way. So even though now as my kids age we have far less of that physical time, I feel like we have deeper conversations, and that's better, better for this stage. So I feel like you kind of want to, as you're looking at your mothering, I don't feel like you want to endure so that you can get to the stage you think looks better. Because honestly, I feel like all the stages are just this flow. And there are things you're going to love and things you're not going to love about each stage. And if you just kind of keep tabs on the blessings of the stage you're in, then it's easier to just enjoy this phase instead of just waiting for it to end. I think you just get one shot. So you should find ways to enjoy each and every phase of it. And if you're not enjoying it, then there's something that needs to shift, right? That you need to look for other resources. You need to find help. You need to develop passion. You need to do something to help you enjoy it, because it should feel good at all the stages.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. What are some times that you've said you would or would not do something and then you totally changed course on that?
Oh, there's so many of
I
them.
know.
We've been reflecting so much on my young motherhood. I remember, this is going to sound terrible, but I remember being a young mom when I had lots of little kids, and I liked order. I had this idea that if things were organized, that made me a better mother somehow. I do still think that's true, but my idea of what organization is has completely shifted. But I remember being a young mom and like labeling bins. I would spend a lot of time labeling bins. There was a bin for Legos, and there was a bin for dolls, and there was a bin for Polly Pockets, and like there was a bin for all sorts of things. And I remember taking so much pride in that. And I can still remember going to my older sister's house. I have 6 older sisters, so most of what I've learned has come from them. And I remember going to my older sister's house, and she had older kids. We went down to her basement, and it was just this disaster. Like, it was just, there were toys everywhere. There was a big wrestling mat. It was like this big giant play zone. And I remember feeling like so superior at that moment, like, oh, my basement would never look like this. And as I've aged and had older kids, I realized that having a play zone like that is free and without bins and labels and whatever, is a way to not resent your kids. I didn't realize that every time I would go down and see the Legos not in the bin, I would feel this sense of like, why can't they just put the Legos in the bin? And it would build resentment in me to some extent. And so as I got older in my mothering, the more I realized my organization had to be more flexible. And what my sister had created in her house, although it was messy, was a place that was inviting and happy and easy for kids to play in. And I think I've found a balance between those two as I get older. And anyway, so that's something where I've definitely eaten my words. I just remember thinking I had everything figured out when I was young, and I did not.
Yeah. Oh, it's so true. Next, I asked her how she finds time to pursue her own passions with everything else she has going on.
That's been something that's been a big piece of the mothering I've done. I think because I did such intense mothering during that time when Jason was traveling, and that kind of sparked in me that I needed something that was my own, even though it had to come at the end of the day when I was a little bit tired. Doing something of my own made a big difference. So I've run a business from my home for 15 years because of that. And I feel like, so my passions tend to be linked with my business. In fact, that's one of my tips I would say is, if you're struggling to find a way to put time and energy into what your passions are, you should seek a way to make it profitable. Like, it doesn't have to be super profitable. It just is a really good motivator and a good way to explain to others why you do what you do. Sometimes women, I find, struggle to say, oh, I just take this time for myself because I need time for myself and it helps me. It sounds too soft. So I found sometimes to say, no, I do this for my family. It helps us earn money. And I also just love it, is an easy, sharp way to say, no, this is what I do, and I choose it on purpose. And it also helps me prioritize things that I'm passionate about, because when they earn money for the family, it's much easier to say, no, guys, I can't do a big, movie night tonight. I have to work. This is part of what I do. So it's easier to kind of prioritize my time and not feel guilty about things. Another big thing I found is, like we talked about earlier, that idea of trying to find harmony instead of balance. I think that's a big one when you're pursuing your passions. For example, if I'm running a race, I don't run a ton, but when I decide I want to run, I'll sign up for a race. I'll make a big commitment. And then that becomes a big focus for that, 3 months or 4 months of training. And that's okay. Other things adjust. I might make more terrible dinners during that time. I might, I would never try to put couch potato book club and running early in the morning in the same part of the year. That, I feel like that's, to pursue your passions, you have to figure out where you can compensate and also figure out where you can purge. I think my kids are far less involved in a lot of extracurricular things than other people's kids are, at least from appearances. Our kids get to do one thing at a time, and between the six of them, that adds up to a lot of things. But I feel like purging what isn't necessary, and it makes a big difference. I think a lot of times I will look at something like a sport and I'll see somebody else's kids involved in that sport, and I'll think, okay, my kid really needs to do that. But then I look at the schedule and I can't figure out how I can possibly make that work. So instead of focusing on the sport itself, I try and focus on what is the actual like adult skill that I'm hoping they get out of that experience. Am I hoping it'll teach them leadership? Am I hoping it'll teach them to, take care of their body? Am I hoping it will teach them teamwork? And then try to find a different activity that fits my schedule that teaches that same value. As I think sometimes I get fixated on, oh no, it needs to be football or it needs to be basketball. We do that every year. And instead, I have to be flexible. In order to pursue the passions that are important to me, I have to have some flexibility, and I try and give my kids those values, but in a different avenue. Does that make sense?
It does, and it ties so well into helping your kids pursue their passions, because I think it's really invaluable for them to see it happening, to see you modeling that for them, and to articulate that to them, like, this is my passion, this is how I'm making time for it, what are you passionate about, just making that
Yeah.
like a human part of the human experience. Like,
Yeah,
I'm
like
a person,
that.
you're a person, let's figure out what we're passionate about.
Yeah, exactly. No, I really like that. I also want my kids to look forward to this stage of life. I think if we look exhausted all the time, if we seem drained all the time, if we, even the way we post on social media, the things we do, they see all of that. And so I feel like we have to be really careful how we're modeling how parenting makes us feel. Because what I don't want to do, I really do believe that this is the greatest work of my entire life and the most important thing I'll do. And I want them to always know that and feel like I take joy from that passion. And so I feel like we have to be careful that we're modeling the happiness we get out of parenting, not just like, oh, I'm doing this as a big self-sacrifice. You're all welcome, like a martyr kind of perspective. I feel
Yes.
like it
Yes.
has to feel different so that they then will want to do it. I want them to be parents, and they won't want it if it looks like it's just something that I'm suffering through for their good.
Yeah, again, it circles back to fun. Like, you have done such a good job of infusing that fun into your culture, that it just keeps coming back up as a value over and over again. That's so cool. So how have you, I mean, you have six kids, so they're obviously all different. They all have different passions. How have you cultivated their talents and their passions?
For me, I feel like it's a lot of flexibility. I wish there are mothers who are very good at like being strict about, this is your thing and we're going to be the best at that one thing. And I think because I was raised in a really big family, that just isn't how I was raised. I was raised to kind of, you can just pick a whole bunch of different things and see what you love to do. And my parents would kind of encourage me, and then I could shift gears and pick something else. So I think that the jack of all tradesness part of me
Yeah,
is,
Renaissance woman.
yeah, a little bit of that, but I'm not expert at anything. I just feel like, but I think that's impacted my mothering. So I feel like we dabble in a lot of things. I feel like this stage of life where they are young and malleable and, open, is a time for them to just explore and try. So none of my kids are going to be expert football players or even piano players or whatever. And my hope is that at some point, as they become adults, they've had enough life experience in their childhood to kind of evaluate what they love to do and then pursue it. I feel like that's how I found my passions. I wasn't great at graphic design when I was 17, and I didn't take a whole bunch of classes, but my parents had given me enough art experience and enough tech experience that as I became an adult and realized that was something I could do, it's something that could earn money, then it became something I focused on and built a passion around. So that's my goal as a parent, is to just give them a smattering of experiences, and kind of be flexible on them becoming great at things. I assume they will become great as adults, and I assume right now they're basically apprentices in all the different things they do, and I should just sort of let them meander a little.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Have you noticed some talents in your kids? And I'm not talking about only the external ones. I'm talking about just some of the character traits that you've been able to help them help them recognize and kind of cultivate those talents.
Yeah, and I feel like you have to say them out loud. I think that's a big piece of cultivating your kids' talents, is to constantly verbally reaffirm that they are real and they exist and they're doing great. I think little things like my daughter, who's 17 now, she's always been a good organizer. It's been one of her, she writes very neatly. She's very good at like um managing her time. She likes to put things in a planner. She's always been kind of that person. So I feel like oftentimes we're in a situation where, Jason's been sick and the kitchen is a mess. And I'll say, Emily, I really need you to do the pantry. You're so good at organizing. Can you just give it a once over and kind of, you know, ask her to do that, or I'll hire her to do it because that's her talent. And I feel like that's one of the ways I found that it develops your kids' talents the quickest, is just to say them over and over again and to give them opportunities to use them just in the day-to-day world. There are so many ways that they can use their talents. Oh, you're so good at music. Dad loves when somebody's playing music. Can you go pick a couple songs, make him a playlist? He needs a playlist that he can listen to when he's at chemo. Those kind of things are ways to develop your kids' talents without spending a ton of money and without taking them out of the house over and over again. So those kind of ways.
Well, and I love how you give it an application with service involved so that you can say, look, you have this. This is how you can use this to help others, help the world, help.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't think about it that way, but yes, I love that. I think that's the whole reason we were given talents, is so that we can make the world a better place somehow. So I think focusing on how your kids can use their talents to bless others rather than how they can grow their talents so they can be the best at something, is a good way to say it. That's a great way to put it.
Oh, well, yeah, I love what you added. That's excellent. Um, how how else has Jason's illness? I can't even fathom the difficulty of that. How has that changed your perspective on motherhood?
I think ooh, you're right. That's a hard one
Yeah,
to
it's it's
articulate.
huge. That's a
Um,
whole other
I
conversation.
I think it's softened all the rough edges. I think it's one of those things where you get very comfortable with inadequacy. Yeah, that's something I was not comfortable with for a long time. I was never a perfectionist, but I really did feel like I could do almost everything and be just fine on my own for a long time. And I feel like when trials that this big come, you just don't have that option anymore. Or if you choose to continue that way, it's self-destructive. You'll cry a lot in your closet, and it's not a good thing. So I found um, it's softened me so much, and it's giving me so much empathy to other people's struggles. I found I don't judge anybody the way I ever would have before. I just kind of assume everybody's in a hard spot and they just are having a hard day, and it's just softened me that way. It's also it helped me see bigger picture. I think I've worried before that I wasn't teaching my kids exactly what they needed to know. I often worried that I wasn't using my time right, that they were not going to get what they needed. And I think the being in this trial, I've noticed that that Heavenly Father finds ways to compensate where you can't be. It's just been such a miraculous thing to watch. I worry about, oh well, so I have a son who has autism, and he just turned 19. And especially when Jason got sick at the beginning, I'm like, I can't. How on earth can I do this? How on earth can I be exactly what he needs and take care of Jason and take care of the other 5 kids? I can't do it. But what I found is, if you pray for help, blessings just kind of surface, and you'll see like that year he had an exceptionally good special ed teacher who compensated for things I never could accomplish. And anyway, I think it's taught me a lot about that I'm not put here to, I wasn't put in this place to accomplish everything. I was put in this place to absorb and to learn and to develop. And anyway, it just has given me the perspective to say it's a process that I'm going through, and I'm trying to learn from it day by day rather than conquer it. I don't have that attitude of like seize the day. I'm going to make this the best day ever. I have much more of an attitude of, okay, what did I learn today? How can I take what I learned today and apply it tomorrow so I can just be a little bit better? And I don't know, that it's helped. It's hard, but it helps.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's beautiful. It makes me think of kind of, I went through some very similar stages. Like I thought I could read enough and find the right answer for everything, like
Yeah.
if I study this hard enough, I'll be able to find one right way to be a mom or the one right way to manage my house or all these things. And I love the way you talk about it, how it's just about constant learning. It's still, learn all the things so that then you have resources to pull from, but there's not this golden ending that is going to solve all your problems or be perfect.
Right. When that you don't have to read all the resources and you don't have to, I just found it was exhausting to compare all those choices. There were so many different ways to mother. So I feel like, especially when you're in struggle, you don't have time for any of those. I remember when Jack was first diagnosed with autism, we had so many kids that I was scared to even join the autism mom groups because they were so devoted to their autistic child. And it always made me feel like I wasn't keeping up, like I haven't read that book. Nope. I don't know about that theory. Oh, nope. I didn't know that was a thing. And it was a constant weight on me. And I realized for me at least, as I mothered Jack, my whole primary goal is that Jack knows every single day and as much as possible throughout the day that I love him and I think he's going to be successful in life. And that is my focus and that is my emphasis. And yes, there's 100 different ways to teach that, but as long as he gets a little piece of that from me every day, I feel like I'm doing what was sent here to do. And I feel like that with my other kids to some degree too. It's not so much about molding them in exactly the right way. It's about keeping them malleable so that as adults, they can be formed into the person they're supposed to be. I'm just supposed to keep them learning. I'm supposed to keep them feeling loved and supported. And I'm not trying to make perfect adults. They won't become that until the very end of their life. I'm trying to just give them option, make them feel appreciated and loved and happy. And if we can accomplish that, then I feel like you can feel like you're a good mom.
Thank you so much for listening to the How She Moms podcast and for being part of this community. There are so many other ways for you to connect and hopefully also contribute. I share tips and ideas regularly on Instagram and Facebook at How She Moms, and we also have a Facebook group that you can join, which is the main place for more philosophical discussions about the ideas I'll be discussing on future episodes of the podcast. It's also one of the best ways for you to contribute to future episodes. You can find past episodes and other resources at howshemoms.com. I have big plans for revamping my site this fall, so stay tuned for that. And you can always just email me directly at whitney@howshemoms.com. Special thanks to my own wonderful mom, Susan Singley, for recording my theme music. She played this song all the time when I was growing up, and to me, it's the soundtrack of motherhood.